Good morning. Welcome back. It's Wednesday. You're halfway through the week. I don't know about you, but one of the things about being home all of the time, it's kind of hard to remember what day it is. And it sort of creeps up on us. We've been looking at our stories and going decade by decade. And so today we come to the year 2000. It wasn't only the beginning of a new decade, it was also the beginning of a new century. All kinds of hopes and dreams that were alive, and just a thrilling time of looking forward. We had survived Y2K, you remember that? But there were other challenges ahead of us. There was a perfect storm brewing in my life during that time, so much so I wasn't sure I was going to survive it at all. The changes that were happening in my family. We were entering into that empty nest phase of life where our girls were leaving from high school and going into college and beginning their own lives. That was a transition. It always is. There were some things also in some of my relationships. I lost a friendship, and that was hard for me. It was a painful experience for me. And we entered into a time when things weren't going really well at church. In fact, things were going south. All of those were coming together at the same time. And for me, I was about to bottom out. I remember going and talking to Howard about it. And one of the things that he said was that people who study sort of the life cycle of a congregation say that about every 7 years there is some kind of crisis. Maybe a crisis in leadership, a crisis in the congregation. People will be discontent. Something will happen that will sort of stir and muddy the waters, and sometimes makes it very difficult on knowing where to go. He told me that he had experienced that a number of times in his own ministry, and he was exactly right. Everything that he said was happening. Problems were surfacing. There was some discontent. It even came to the place that I wondered whether or not it was time for me to leave Monte Vista. I prayed about it, but God wouldn't release me from that call, which made the burden even heavier to be able to carry. I was spiritually pretty dry. For 25 years, I had been in vocational ministry without any kind of break at all. I had been leading worship, but didn't have those opportunities to worship and to be fed myself. I was pretty empty on every level, especially spiritually. I was burning out. And I needed help. I needed a break, not only spiritually, but also physically and mentally and emotionally as well. So the church allowed me to go on a sabbatical. I had a lot riding on that sabbatical because I was looking at it as a time to be away and to find an answer. Is it time for me to leave Monte Vista? But there was really even a greater question that needed to be answered, and that is this the time for me to leave ministry altogether? It was that bad. I was at the lowest point I had ever been in my life. And I was ready to walk away from everything, to find another job vocationally, to walk away. I wanted an answer. And so my hopes were all pinned that while I was gone, I would be able to find exactly what God wanted me to do. So we left. We had a good time with our family. We were able to travel and see some things, got some rest. But time began to run out. It was almost time for us to come home. And I still didn't have an answer to the question that I was looking for about what my future was going to be, either at Monte Vista or in ministry as well. Every week we worshiped at the church at the seminary in Prague. They used the lectionary text, which was a standard text, and they rotated professors who would preach each week. On that last Sunday that we were there, we were getting ready to come home in a few days, Cheryl Brown, who was an Old Testament professor, preached a sermon about Elijah. And as she was reading and telling that story and preaching, I began to realize that story was my story, and that the things that happened to Elijah were the things that were happening to me. He had had some success, so had I. He had had some opposition, so had I. He left, wanted to run away. That was me as well. He was ready to give up. I was too. He got some rest, as did I. And then in the end, he heard the answer. of what God wanted him to do. God said through an angel to Elijah, go back the way you came, because I still have work for you to do. I want you to anoint Elisha as your successor. I want you to anoint Hazael as king. And he began to give him a whole list of things that he wanted him to do. And that was my answer. Go back the way you came, because I still have work for you to do. We're not through yet. I went to talk to Cheryl afterward and told her what a meaningful time it was. She said it was the worst sermon she had ever preached, and I said, no, it wasn't, because it was meant exactly for me. Every word that you said was a word that was directed to me. And I want you to know that it has saved my life, and it has saved my ministry. I learned a lot through that whole experience. But one thing I learned that I want to share with you right now is about timing. You know, I went away on that sabbatical looking for an answer, and I kept thinking, God, why aren't you saying something? It wasn't until the end, when it was about time to come home, that he spoke. His timing was perfect. I know that a lot of you right now are secluded, you're waiting, and you're wondering, when is this going to be over? I don't know the answer to that. But what I would say to you is, don't give up. Hang in there, because the answer is coming. God is working, and in his perfect timing, he will open the doors. He will release us. He will save us. He will work through us. He will do mighty and wonderful things. He's still doing it. And he can do it in your life. And I believe he will. So, don't give up. Have a good week. I look forward to seeing you on Friday.